Welcome to this week's edition of Next Steps Forward. I'm your host, Chris Meek. It's great to have you with us again. And it's great to have entrepreneur and philanthropist Eric Canonico with us for the entire podcast today. Eric is the president, CEO, and chairman of the board of a very unique nonprofit organization, the MotoPara Foundation. Eric, welcome to Next Steps Forward.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome. Welcome
to the show,
hotel.
Exactly. It's everyone's show.
It's everybody's show.
So Eric, with most guests, at this point, I would open with a brief bio introduction, but, given your very unique background, I just don't think I could do your life story justice. Would you mind just briefly sharing with our listeners a little bit about who and what you are?
Well, we only have an hour, right?
That's why I said brief.
Exactly. Born and raised in Washington, D.C., 52 years old. I've had many different careers and life experiences. Everything from being in the entertainment industry in L.A., to having a franchise in the construction industry that we developed, and several others, a software hardware development company. But basically grew up in Washington, D.C. Area in Northern Virginia. Was very blessed and lucky enough to have parents that made it real, kept it real. My dad was West Point grad, so that'll give you any indication on how life
sums it up.
Yeah, my younger brother, who's 12 years younger than me, he got away with a lot more. I don't know if he got away with a lot more, but he got less trouble. My father says that I wore him and my mother out.
The test drive. Yes,
exactly. I was apparently a bit of a handful growing up. So, no, I mean, I had various different businesses growing up. Some successful, some of them failures. Where you fail, you learn. And you pick yourself up and you move to the next venture. And hopefully you're smart enough to surround yourself with individuals that help you achieve your goals. And I've been lucky enough to do that several times in my life. And I'm very proud to be surrounded by individuals from MotoPara Foundation that come from all walks of life, various different industries, all experts in their field, and the various fields. And I'm just very lucky to have these people. And we're always adding new additional team members. And every week and every month it makes me proud to be a part of this organization, because we get to have a lot of unique individuals from around the world come apart and help with our mission. So, I was, let's see here. Do you want me to get into the cancer stuff?
No,
or
we'll get into that.
Okay,
So,
all right. So, that was my reset button.
Perfect. Well, you mentioned the MotoPara Foundation, which we'll talk about as well, but you briefly talked about your father. He's a graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point, served our country both on active duty and in the Army Reserves. He also has 47 years of experience in construction and land development projects. You said that your dad is one of your greatest influences. Could you share with our listeners what way he influenced you?
Don't tell him.
We'll send him a link to the show if he's not listening now.
Right, exactly. He is. My mother and my father, both, are probably the two most influential individuals I've had in my entire life. That, and oddly enough, my son. So it sounded horrible the way I just said it, but he taught me a lot as well. And he continues to impress and inspire me on a daily basis. So, but the two most are my mother and my father. I was very lucky and very blessed to have my mother in the early stages of my life as a single mother, a single parent, who was very young age in Washington, D.C. By herself. That in the 60s was not the most accepted practice of having a child on your own. And she did it very well. And then she met my father, and he adopted me, and I took his last name. And from that point on, he's been a very big influence in everything. Sometimes when I speak to my son, and growing up, when he was growing up, he's 19 now, I'll say something and I remember it, vividly. Sometimes I'll say exactly what my father would have said to me, and I just cringe because I go, "Oh, he got me again," But back, he's pretty amazing human being, and so is my mother. My mother's just an actual stellar human being. So.
Well, obviously, many successful people have that strong role model, or role models in your case, but they also have an inflection point, or some people call it a watershed moment in their lives. You've had both. Not only has your father and your mother had a tremendous positive influence for you, but you've also had that inflection point in 2004 when you were diagnosed with leukemia and then beat that dreaded disease. How did that experience change your life, or your perspective, your mission and goals?
Well, I was a bit of a jerk before. Just ask my mom and dad. So I was, prior to that reset button, I was very much focused on money, business success, and at the detriment of some key things in my life that I needed to have. I needed to check myself, let's say. And it was, it was, I always say that I was blessed to actually, most people would not think that way, but I was blessed to actually be diagnosed with the equivalent of stage 4 leukemia, AML, told by Dr. David Wright, who was an amazing doctor, just absolutely amazing oncologist, hematologist. I remember he's got a Southern drawl, and I actually joked with him and used to call him Pyle, like Gomer Pyle, because he was 6-something tall, thin build, just always a smile on his face. And when he sat there and told me that, I was negotiating with him when he told me that, I was like, well, I don't have time for this. I've got other things that I'm working on that I need about 90 days to put everything in place. And he's like, you don't have 90 days. And I said, all right, well, let's work with a month. Give me a month. And he's like, you don't have a month. I said, all right, a few weeks. And I remember him saying, you don't have 3 weeks. He says, if we don't get into this right now, and he goes, and I can't give you any guarantees it's going to work, but we need to be aggressive in this, and we need to start right now. And that was an eye opener. Most people are not told that they have less than 3 weeks to live. Generally, cancer, what I've been told is cancer patients generally have, in most cases, extended periods, maybe a month, 2 months, 3, a year, whatever. But when you're counting down on weeks and days, it's an eye opener. And I remember asking him, I said, well, how sure are you about this? And he said, and I remember I was laying in bed, in the hospital bed, and he and I are just alone in the room, and he's sitting on a chair, and he's kind of like hunched over and kind of like leaning forward and talking to me. And he said, he goes, well, I bet the farm, and my family has a farm. So I bet it.
Pretty sure.
So I'm pretty sure. So, and lo and behold, we had the biopsy, bone marrow biopsy, and it was confirmed. And then I spent July 4th in a hospital bed looking out the windows at over the Tampa Bay skyline and watching fireworks from a hospital floor in the cancer ward. So most people don't realize that leukemia patients are a little bit different than what they call lumps and bumps. A lot of people in various different cancer, they can, I'm not saying it's a relatively normal life, but they can sustain a daily routine of some sort, a lot of them, until it gets really bad, where they actually go in for their chemo maybe once, twice, 3 times a week, what have you, and then they actually, will go through. Leukemia patients, we typically, I don't say we, but they typically live in the hospital. I think over the period of time that I was, from the moment I was diagnosed to the moment I was cancer free, which I'll get in that in a second, I think we calculated out of the hospital for, I think, 45 days. It's either 43 or 45 days. And the rest of it was in a hospital. I mean, Tampa General Hospital in Tampa, Florida was amazing. They actually took a room, made it into an office for me, dropped the T1 line into it. I could do video conferencing with the backdrop of the bay. They went well above and beyond. It was an amazing, I mean, you had to have an experience in this. They made it very, very easy to try to strive to beat it, you know. But I remember one key factor that my son was 4 years old. And I remember him asking me to make him a promise that I wouldn't let this cancer take his dad. And so with that, my son and I have that special bond. If you ever hear my son or myself say the words, "I promise," it means that we will do everything humanly possible to make sure that that promise is executed. Because it's a pact we made then and have revisited throughout the rest of his 15 additional years that he's been on the planet. So I don't make promises that I don't believe that we can achieve or deliver on. It's not in me now. But yeah, it was a very unique experience. I almost bled to death twice. There was a person that was my girlfriend at the time, and she if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be here right now. On two different occasions, where she actually took control and really got some people, rattled some cages, shall we say. But not many people know that. If it wasn't for her, and of course the treatments and everything else that I was doing, but it really was in two different occasions where most people don't realize when you're a leukemia patient, you can cough hard, sneeze hard, you can bump into the corner of a table, and because your platelets are so low, you bleed to death. So it's one of those things where, and if you get a temperature, you're immediately into the hospital again. So, thank God for Xbox, you know. Shout out to Microsoft and Xbox, because we had a lot of the everybody from doctors, the head of oncology, the head of urology. We had tournaments in my cancer floor and in my room, so we had nurses involved. You know, my goal when I was going through this was to make everybody laugh. It was a way for me to deal with, and those that are close to me know that I have dark humor, inappropriate humor, pretty much crossing all gamuts, politically incorrect, things of that nature. So if I can make you laugh in one way or the other, I probably try to do it. So, you know, I was told 18 months. Was told it was going to be aggressive rounds of chemo repeatedly. At the end of the 18 months, I was going to have a bone marrow transplant. And I was lucky enough to be cancer-free in 4 months. So I was cancer-free, which was December 12th, or I mean, sorry, December, that was my mother's birthday, December 8th, 2004, I was cancer-free. And Dr. Wright and his various, Dr. Fink and a few others that were part of their practice back then really couldn't believe that I had, you know, basically done it in 4 months. So I took a vow at that point in time that I said that I was going to do everything in my power to make a difference in people's lives and on the planet. And I've pretty much strived for that over the last coming up on 16 years. So.
That's great. Well, following that difficult time and your years of experience in the construction industry, you recognize that there are some pressing needs from the first responder, emergency call management, the disaster relief, humanitarian relief industries. Was there any sort of an aha moment, or did that realization just sort of percolate and come to you gradually?
It was actually Maria, when we were in talks with 2 different countries, and they're gonna hate me because I always butcher the name of it. It's either Dominica or Dominica, depending on in the Caribbean. It's a unique island nation that's on their own, and also the Bahamas. So when the hurricanes came through, and Maria came, I think it was Maria came through back then. We were in talks with the Prime Minister's office and the Secretariat to the Prime Minister, and he shared with me. We were trying to coordinate relief effort to get them drinking water through one of our partners back then, Anheuser-Busch InBev, with their program where they actually do their canneries and switch them over to canned drinking water. The problem with it is Dominica was without both their airports. They have a northeastern and a southwestern airport, and both of them had been destroyed or full of debris and you couldn't land. The surrounding islands had issues with the vessels that were available, because they had been, most of them had gone through the hurricane as well. So we were unable to get the relief that we wanted into the island. And we were communicating back and forth. I personally was communicating back and forth with the Secretariat, and he kept sending me these links. And they were of two young men that were natives, born and raised on the island. And they had stolen, I don't want to use the word stolen, they acquired 2 motorcycles that were dirt bikes. And one of them used their drone, and the other one used his MacBook Pro. And they strapped him to the back of the motorcycles, and they went through the island. And they went from village to village to village, and they would send up the drone. They would record where it was with the GPS. They would do a head count of who was available, and they would have these videos time and time again. And they were able to get in and out of places on the island that, because they were using motorcycles, and specifically off-road motorcycles, they were able to get to places where no one else could get to. And it was that effort that inspired us to do a deep dive on disaster response and to see how many nations use motorcycles in their relief efforts. And that was the first start. And we started diving into that, and we realized that that there aren't a lot of disaster response teams that are using enduro or on or off-road motorcycles. There's very limited of the motorcycles that are manufactured that actually are capable of being used in that capacity. There's probably only a handful or 2 that really work. We did a full evaluation on brands worldwide, the models within the brands, everything. We've partnered now with KTM Husqvarna with a specific type of motorcycle that gives about a 300 plus mile range, up to 350 mile range, which is unheard of. So you can safely get out 150 miles inland and then return back if need be. We've co-developed it with one of our innovation labs that was spearheaded by Scott Cameron and Kevin Ward, where we have Pelican cases that are we can pull the ripcords and throw those off, and we can get into places where we can't. One of the things that inspired us to kind of take that leap was also the fact that we were like, oh, we could get a bunch of motorcycles in. You get 12 bikes and 14 bikes into the same space as a Humvee. So you could actually send an entire 12-man team out to a disaster site and get them into areas where they couldn't get with a Humvee or a larger vehicle. But how do you get that team and those motorcycles into a specific area where nobody else can get to? And one of the things that inspired us about this incident, that we couldn't get an aircraft, we couldn't get a C-130 into their airports because they weren't functional. I remembered as a kid, always loving the amphibious aircrafts of the years past, of Grumman albatrosses. And we started realizing that, you know, if we were to get our hands on some of those and actually use those, they were very unique. Even though they're outdated and what have you, there's nothing like them on the planet. They can land on unimproved runways and roads and gravel and grass, and they can land in the water and up to seas of 6 feet cresting waves and 10-foot rolling seas. I wouldn't want to be on them when that's doing that, but they have that capability. They were designed for that capability. You know, they can carry up to about 30 people and about 8,000 plus pounds of cargo. So that's a lot to get into an area, whether you have to land on water or you have to land in on a unimproved roadway or something of that nature that's a makeshift runway. So we sought after to combine the two, combine the Albatross aircraft as primary aircraft for tip of the spear into disasters based on the fact of what happened in Dominica, of not being able to get to those people, and then combining the motorcycles, specially built motorcycles, within as cargo and teams to actually get into the area, and then be able to deploy those bikes into go inland into areas that most cannot. And then we started crafting who would that be, and you know, would they be ex-motorcycle racers, you know, would it be, you know, military and what have you, or a combination of the two and what have you. And you know, we were lucky enough to have 3 things happen very, very quickly. Rob Britz, who's one of our board members and our chief strategy officer, was dialed in at the right place at the right time, and he teamed up and found the Barron family, and Mike and Dylan Barron, a father and son team of 2nd and 3rd generation aviators. They had the inspiration enough to and the gall to go after it, and they acquired 7 of the forgotten G111s, and which were the Albatross, Grumman albatrosses used for civilian use. And they were down in mothballed in Arizona, and they rescued them. They put it out, you know, hey, look, we've got 7 of these birds. You know, we were seeking just one of them, you know, but we had an opportunity to save 7 of them. So Rob got a hold of them and convinced them that after they heard our story about why we wanted to use the albatrosses, Mike decided not only to donate all 7 of the aircraft to our foundation, but also to come on board and help us and work with the foundation as well. And one of the things that we Dylan and Mike spoke of was they wanted to protect the flying heritage of these amphibious aircraft. And so, you know, we set out to utilize them and refurb them and things of that nature. And we now have, and that led to someone else actually hearing the story and donating their aircraft to us. So we now have 8 aircraft that are in the process of being, it's a long process, but it's a process of being restored and brought back to flight ready capability so we can start running missions with them. And that we're looking into 2021 to actually have some of the birds in the air that we can start utilizing in that manner, to start funneling in, and that has led us to, you know, down the road, it has led us down the road in which to, you know, capitalize on the uniqueness of that aircraft and additional assets and things of that nature, but all focusing now on the Special Operations Forces operators. So, you know, the civilians would call them Green Berets and Navy SEALs and MARSOC Marines and PJs, and combat air traffic controllers and things of that nature. And there's a litany of others that are in that, what they call soft community. And we were lucky enough to have a very distinguished group in an early on stage while we were doing this, be introduced. Rob, once again, Rob Ritz had met these guys, and they were the original group of ODA 595, which were the SF, the Special Forces Green Beret Unit, that were the first on, well, there were a multitude of them, but they were one of the first on the ground, boots on the ground after 9/11 in Afghanistan. You guys and your viewers and listeners may recall a movie called 12 Strong, or the so 12 Strong, and there's a memorial to that unit at Ground Zero, and we were lucky enough to be introduced to some of those members, and I was lucky enough to be introduced to a gentleman named John Coco, who John was very influential early on. And kind of helped us. He didn't pull any punches, to say the least, which I kind of like. He was like, "No, that's stupid. Don't do that. Hey, you should be doing this because this will help you do that, and what have you." And nobody gives a crap about that. I mean, it was. I remember the first call we had. It was like almost 5 hours long, and he was sick as a dog in the Bahamas in a resort. And the rest of his family was out. I think they were snorkeling or something of that nature. And he was laid up in bed. And he just went through like, okay, here's all of the stuff you've got is great, except you need to get rid of this. And he helped us focus. And it was because of John that we kind of shifted gears in one direction, and kind of took that mission and kind of focused it into to specifically target as a main concentration of transitioning soft community operators and support personnel to the soft community, transition them from their honorable service in the military to their noble service at MotoPara. Trying to allow them to keep their MOS or their whatever they did in the military for civilians, kind of like their job description. Whatever they did in the military, they would transition into us, and they would do the same with us in that fashion. And then also, whenever possible, is to try to bring those team members that may have been together in military, and now that they've, either in a group have left the military or over a course of 3 to 5 years have all left out, and we can bring those teams back together. It's one of our objectives, is to try to bring those teams together. They're very unique, to say the least. They are unlike conventional military personnel. Conventional military is, here's an order, execute the order, no questions asked. To the most part. The group of soft operators that most the general public, they see the movies, they read the books, that kind of stuff. But when you start to get into, being with them and really diving into what makes them tick and what is triggers for them, both positive and negative, things of that nature, you realize that they're taught to go without support, and they have to think on their feet, and they have to assess things from moment by moment, and either individually or collective as a team, execute their mission based on, at the moment, every moment they're on, until they execute it, of the situations that arise. And they're free thinkers, a lot of them have beards, a lot of them are unconventional. The joke is, we always say that we're the island of the broken toys, and we love the broken toy. Bring us your toys, and there's a home here for you, that type of scenario. So with that, it's over the last few years now, we've been able to continuously hone it until, and we'll always, learn and adapt, and just like they do, they adapt and overcome. We're challenged. We do the same thing. Our goal is to have 3 primary bases throughout the world. We've done everything from a ring radius execution point from the Western Hemisphere, the Central Europe and Africa, and Eastern Asia to the Asian Pacific Rim areas, where we can get an albatross from a base to, we call it a one hop. If we can get anywhere in that region, Western Hemisphere from Florida, if we can go one hop and be in anywhere we need to, north or south, wherever there's people in need, that's the goal. To get there within less than 18 hours is the ultimate goal by air, and less than 18 days by ship, with full support, cargo, relief, things of that nature. So with all that said, it almost sounds like we're, created a, paramilitary group, coming and bringing them out. And we're not. Some would say that we have we kind of would lean in that realm, but not really. What we found was interesting. We thought we were, I love getting these reality checks from life and the world, where you think you have it all figured out, and then somebody or some course of action actually then opens your eyes even wider. It's the tree in the forest. You're too close to the tree. That you got a bark mark on your forehead. And you get an opportunity to step back and see a little bit more, and you can actually adjust. And we've done that, and we've been able to have that happen to us, where we've realized that that it's I'm sorry, I'm sitting here, that we could do more than just go out and help people, that we from a disaster relief or a humanitarian relief, we can actually help those that are the most highly trained warriors in the world, that when they leave the military, what gives them that level of challenge, both mentally, physically, everything, how do they integrate back into society? Well, we figured that there's a way now that we can take their skill sets and we can move them, or help guide them and move them into our organization. Well, with that, we realized that we thought we were we're going to go out and do all these military style executed medical relief and things of that nature. And when we started interviewing various different NGO nonprofits, that were in this space, and there's many great, there's hundreds and thousands of them all over the world that are fantastic. What we realized was the world didn't need another Doctors Without Borders. The world didn't need another, Doctors Missions Network. What they needed was someone to assist them, to be on call when their need was to get to the site, and to get them to the site in a timely fashion with the right personnel and the right relief supplies and equipment, but also to make sure that they're safe getting in, and while they're performing their duties, that they're safe and protected in their execution. And then, of course, bringing them back out of an area. Look, if you're going into a disaster site, you're going into harm's way, period. It's an eye-opener, even close to our own borders. We've seen it inside our own borders. Katrina was a prime example. Andrew was another prime example. We had friends and relatives in both scenarios, which were in law enforcement and fire rescue. And, we've had where societal structured systems have broken down, and that's here in the United States. So you start going outside the United States, and the infrastructure is not even close in many countries to be as solid as our network and our structure in the US. So if it can happen here, and everyone goes from, the laws and your normal society, accepted actions and behaviors and things of that nature, and that shifts into survival. We're animals, we're humans, that's what we are, we go into survival mode. And it doesn't matter, you know, socioeconomics. It doesn't matter race, religion, trained, untrained. If you're in survival mode, you're trying to survive, period. And that, you know, causes unrest and chaos. And here in the United States, we handle it, or generally, local, over the last year or so, it's been a little challenging, but generally we have it pretty locked down. We pretty much have it figured out. But the majority of the world is a little different, and they need someone, and they need a group that has this, you know, they call it TTP. I was, you know, Colonel Dean Franks, one of our key C-level individuals, and has taught me the TTP, which is tactical techniques and procedures. And it all comes down to how are you going to execute in the world of chaos, you know, things of that nature. Going into these disaster sites, I think we get a skewed view. We get to see what the press wants us to see, or what they're allowed to show us. In many cases, it's what they're allowed to show us. And it's very different. I mean, and most people don't realize this, that here even in the Bahamas, the last hurricane that came through the Bahamas that hit them pretty hard, Marsh Harbor and Freeport and things of that nature, there were volunteers that came in various different organizations that literally, you know, they tapped out. They simply said, I'm a volunteer. I'm not paid to be here. I don't want to be here anymore. And they left, because it was, even though that they're first responders, even if they were fire rescue or doctors or nurses, in some of the cases, it was so overwhelming that they had not seen the level of carnage, that they just simply couldn't handle it. So that's one of the reasons why we don't accept volunteers, and why for us to put our team members into harm's way in a disaster site, they must be, if they're in the field operators, they must be military, you know, or ex-military, you know, veterans, because the majority of your doctors, nurses, and everyday civilian society is not trained or properly, you know, or capable of handling what they get to see when they're in that situation. So, you know, we have capitalized on and strive to use what the U.S. military and other allied forces and their their soft community have trained and taught these individuals to allow us to capitalize and utilize those into a more efficient means in which to basically arrive and protect and set up order, and what they call establish a FOB, a forward operating base, securing a beachhead or a dock, or an airport that's been destroyed. You know, how do you go in and an air traffic control tower is down? So it's one of the reasons why we concentrate on having team members that are combat air traffic controllers, you know, so that they can fly in, ride in, parachute in, and get and establish situations to help structure, you know, the amount of relief aircraft that are going to start coming in, because it's mayhem. I mean, it's literally mayhem. You've got NGOs that are coming in from this side of the world and this side of the world. They're coming into a disaster zone. The government's already been hit hard, so the local government's been hit. You know, those are all those individuals that, whether they're part of their defense force or their national police force or their rescue and everything else, a lot of times those individuals, their families, their homes have been destroyed as well. So they're caring for their family members, or trying to do their job and still care for their family members. And they're not as well equipped as the United States. So it becomes very challenging for other countries to do that. So that's one of the reasons why we kind of stay, I don't want to say stay in our lane, but our objective is to be very strategic, tip of the spear, be able to bring those teams in, set up a safe environment for other NGOs to come in and continue to do their work, and us continue to help coordinate supplies and transfer back and forth personnel whenever possible. So, how's that?
Great. No, so we've completely blown through our first break here, and I just want to keep on going.
Sorry.
This is fascinating stuff. No, please.
Oh, I don't need a break. You know that.
Exactly. You just mentioned being tip of the spear. How is it that MotoPara is able to put together all these pieces of the puzzle when other groups, other NGOs, other governments have been unable to do that?
I wouldn't say that they're unable. There are several groups. There's a few, less than a handful, that are kind of structured the way that we are, but specifically utilizing the soft community in the way that they are. But there's some phenomenal GSD and a few others that are out there that are doing what we do, and there's room for more. Let's just say for that scenario. And like GSD has been doing it for almost a decade, I think 7 years or something of that nature. And up until recently, a few years ago or a couple of years ago, they weren't even an incorporated nonprofit. They weren't an actual foundation. They were a group of guys supported by a single individual that said, hey, look, we can go out and help utilize the skill sets that Uncle Sam gave you guys, and we can go out quickly and efficiently and help out. So we're in that world, in that case, we're kind of doing the same thing. So I don't think that they're unable to do it. It's just a matter of it's such a vast and large problem, if that makes sense, when a disaster takes place, that you can't be everything to everyone or everything to every situation. So it really does make more sense to have organizations concentrate on their skill sets and their capabilities, and then work in conjunction with others that have other skill sets. And then collectively, you can help, organize and implement and try to cut down on the chaos. Look, it's happened in every disaster, no matter what disaster you're anywhere in the world. You have opportunists, right? So where someone is weakened, you have other people that will take advantage of. So, one of our objective is to help mitigate that, and by helping the other NGOs, allow them to do their specific tasks and their missions unencumbered, if that makes sense, whenever possible. So I don't think it's others have failed or have not been able to do what we're doing. It's just a matter of we're taking a different approach, and we're filling a small void, and that void has enough room for others like us to help to fill it. And as long as those organizations are communicating, then it can be a combined effort. It's when the other NGOs start butting heads, and you have stronger NGOs, literally commandeering supplies from weaker NGOs and things of that nature, or you have the real thing, guerrillas and pirates and things of that nature. I mean, stuff that you hear about in movies, but it's a real thing. I mean, there are, factions out there that are going to capitalize on the fact that they can go in and, in the chaos, go ahead and go shopping, for whatever they want or whatever's available, whether it's, drugs or controlled substances for morphine to, you name it, to simple supplies, and food. We were told by one or a couple of NGOs, actually, when we were interviewing them, that in the Bahamas, they were one of the first ones in, and they came across 3 different situations where certain island nation pirates came to them, and basically one of them, with machetes and AK-47, and stuck one in one woman's chest and said, look, we're going to take all your supplies, or we're going to, kill you where you stand. And literally 3 separate issues tried to take, all of their relief supplies, because they simply weren't capable of fending them off in that manner. And nor, because of such an early stage, nor could the Defense Force of the Bahamas do it, because it was such chaos and everything else. But that same organization had run into this situation down in Latin America, where they had brought supplies in. That's one of the things that we found was the missing kind of link. And one of the reasons why we've been in talks in partnership with Maersk, which is the largest shipping and logistics company in the world, is one of the problems is what we concentrate on. We always say that we're a neutral nonprofit NGO that provides last mile protective services, protective logistics services. And one of the examples why we've kind of concentrated on that is because of these stories that we hear from these NGOs. And I mean, they had basically what we found is in the world of NGOs going into a disaster zone, they're at the mercy of generally the shipping industry, to bring, cargo in, and supplies, because only so much can be brought in via air, right? So you have to bring ships in many times, or via truck or rail or something of that nature, because, everything's about weight with aircraft, right? And you have such limitations. So, they have told us situations where, and multiple NGOs have told us this, where they'll go in and they'll grab or they'll contract and charter a ship, and they're at a discounted rate, low to no cost. But then a paying customer comes in and says, hey, I need that cargo ship. And they're paying full rate. So the cargo ship basically goes to the full rate customer, meaning that the NGO sits there and waits for the next available. And when you're in a disaster response standpoint, hours, days, and weeks all count, in many cases, seconds and minutes. So they told us, this one particular group I'm honing in on, because they told us so many different stories, horror stories actually, where they actually were able to do that. They got a ship, they got their supplies, they got it unloaded at a dock, and 2 trucks pull up and they say, it's $38,000 for you to go 4 miles inland. Pay it or have your supplies rot on the dock. It's that simple. You're at their mercy. There was other incidences where we were told that they actually paid people to bring their supplies in and their personnel. They get into a jungle or they get in a situation, they kick everybody off the truck, have a nice day, take all the supplies and go. And they even paid them, locals. So, I mean, that stuff happens all the time. So that last mile logistics is where it really comes in. It really comes in, if you can get everything to a destination. Puerto Rico is a prime example. You had trucks, T-Mobile, Deutsche Telekom brought in, I think the F-250s. I think they brought in something like 200 of them or something of that nature. They brought in generators. They brought in, there were other situations that have been brought in where they simply didn't have the means to distribute it once they got there, and things of that nature. I mean, T-Mobile did, because they were for their own workers and their own techs, but generators, pallets of water that sat in warehouses, because they simply didn't have the capability of taking them to the last mile, things of that nature. So that's what we're honed in on, is basically that protective last mile logistics, and partnering with either companies like Maersk, and I always butcher their name. I'm so sorry, guys, because they're going to be listening to this later and going, "Gosh, you can't say our name right." But they're an amazing group. Red One Medical, several of them out there that are just phenomenal. That are helping us do what we need to do, if that makes sense.
No, totally. Thank
So,
you. And with the last 3, 4 minutes of the show here, let's switch over to something that's affecting all of us right now and talk about COVID-19. Right now, MotoPara is currently involved in delivering a pop-up teardown COVID-19 testing system. What exactly does the testing system look like and entail? And can you tell our listeners how it works?
well, yeah, it's very, very simple. I was quarantined. So I went through as one of the first group to come in through Hillsborough County CDC tent system at Raymond James Stadium. The lines went all the way out into the street, and I went through that experience, and it was time consuming. It took 10 days to get my results. It was very cumbersome. It was not very well efficient or laid out for efficiency and things of that nature. So once again, Rob Britz from our group, I was on the phone with him while I was quarantined, and I said, look, there's got to be a better way. Let's get our team together and let's figure out a better way, right? So oddly enough, my ex-wife, who I'm very close and very good friends with, Susan Canonico, who owns ADM Exhibits and Displays, or ADM2 Exhibits and Displays, they had been doing pop-up tent systems for forever, right? And she had told me about a pathogen-resistant biocube or medical cube that went up and was affixed to these pop-up tents. And I mean, I had driven my son's sailing team from all over the state and whatever. And we always had these pop-up tents, that we would use and for shelter while we were actually bringing the teams out and stuff. So very quick, very efficient, very easy. So what we did was we looked at how the flow, and when we first started this, it was geared towards first responders. So we looked at jurisdictionally, police officers, law enforcement either have a 2-person per squad car or a single person per squad car. So we looked at how could we use the efficiencies of bringing the vehicles through a tent structure that were all geared on how quickly you could test everybody in the vehicle. So assessing the occupancy rate of a vehicle and then assigning that occupancy, whether it was single occupant, dual occupant, or even up to 6 occupants for a fire truck. That's how we had designed it. So it became a series of tent systems that were actually staged through that literally have designed in them stages so that, we can do 18 simultaneous swabs with multiple vehicles where they're, on single-sided on the driver's side for single occupants and double-sided on multi-occupant. And that's all assessed by when you pull up what lane you're going to. So we designed the system to be a complete testing site of a maximum capability of, I think it's 36 simultaneous swabs that can take place. But the whole system can be put up, pop up. Even our cones are pop up. It's hilarious. Little traffic cones. They all compress down. Everything's about efficiency and weight and everything else because that's how we think for disaster response. So everything can be loaded in a couple of Humvees and brought out, and or vehicles rather. We just happen to use Humvees and their trailers, and we pop up in 2 hours. We can have a full testing site up and running. 2 hours, less than 2 hours, we can tear the whole thing down and then move it to another area. It's designed so that it can be flexible so that when we have hot zones pop up, I'm currently in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So Lake Charles is 2 hours drive from here. They got hit twice now. Poor guys. They got hit twice. So they have a sea of several thousand of relief workers that are all over in the FEMA camps over there. So they didn't have that situation. So the ability to go over and pop up tents and start testing and things of that nature is designed exactly for that. Or if you have a higher concentration, or you have an outbreak that, let's say on a college campus, that we can literally come in very quickly and set up a team and do either short-term, regional, or short-term, mid-term, or even long-term structures of testing. So, but we also didn't want to stop there. I don't mind it. I hope you don't mind that I'm going to lead into the next thing, unless you want to go ahead.
Well, we've got about 45 seconds left here.
All right. Well, we created the first, with partnership of Integrated Health and Todos Medical, we created the first mobile high complexity laboratory that is built to a BSL-3 spec. We are currently validating it here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and look to start deploying them domestically and internationally, as we're already working with several foreign governments and several states and universities.
Fantastic. That's great stuff. Eric Canonico with the MotoPara Foundation, thank you so very much for being with us today. Truly appreciate it. And thank you to our listeners. Thanks for tuning in to Next Steps Forward. I'm Chris Meek. Be sure to tell your friends and family that we'll be back next Tuesday, same time and same place, with another leader from the world of business, politics, sports, or entertainment. Until then, stay safe and keep taking your next steps forward.
Thank you, Chris.